It was a Thursday. Ordinary. Quiet. The kind of day where the fridge hums louder than your thoughts. I was cleaning out the junk drawer. You know, batteries that don't work, pens that ran out of ink 3 years ago, spare keys you're too scared to throw away just in case they unlock something you forgot exists. Buried in that mess was a receipt. Not mine. Not hers. Either. At least, not for anything she ever told me about. 2 cocktails. Appetizer sampler. 1 ribeye. 1 vegan lasagna. Date. 2 weeks ago. Location. A restaurant we used to go to every anniversary. My stomach dropped. And then twisted. You know that feeling? When your body knows something before your brain catches up. That receipt said more than 100 conversations ever could. But I didn't say anything. Not that night. Not the next. Instead, I waited. I listened. I watched. And I noticed things I'd been too blind, or too trusting, to see. Like how she stopped laughing at my jokes. Or how she started locking the bathroom door to check work emails. How she stopped wearing perfume, unless she said she was meeting her sister. Then came Sunday. We were in the kitchen, folding towels. The most normal, boring domestic moment you can imagine. And out of nowhere, she said it. I want to live for myself without you. She said it like she was ordering a smoothie. No tremble in her voice. No warning. No, we need to talk. Just, I want to live for myself without you. And you know what I said? I didn't beg. Didn't cry. Didn't even flinch. I said, go ahead. But not in my house. And not on my dime. She blinked. Twice. Like reality had just slapped her across the face. That's not what I meant, she whispered. But it was too late. She meant it when she said it. And I meant it when I replied. Because freedom? It comes with a price. And I was done being the one paying for it. When I told her she could live for herself, but not in my house, and not on my dime, something broke in her expression. Not sadness. Not guilt. It was panic. Like she had just misplayed a game she thought she controlled. She reached for words, but none came. Instead, she just stood there in our kitchen, arms limp at her sides, looking like someone who dropped a glass and watched it shatter in slow motion. She eventually whispered, that's not what I meant, but I didn't care. Because suddenly, everything did make sense. Every disconnected excuse, every, I just need some time to think. Every Friday, she came home smelling like a hotel hallway. It was all one ugly mosaic. And I was the idiot who kept pretending it was abstract art. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She just left the room and took her phone with her. Again, always the phone. I went upstairs, locked myself in my office, and opened a fresh document. Not to write a message. To write a list. A list of everything I had ignored. Item 1. 2 months ago, she switched her phone background from a picture of us at Lake Crescent to some generic sunset. Item 2. She unfollowed my sister on Instagram and never told me why. Item 3. She suddenly started wearing lingerie, not on nights we were together, but on nights she had drinks with coworkers. The more I wrote, the worse it got. And then, I did something I'm not proud of. I picked up her tablet. She rarely used it, but it was synced to her phone from years ago. She'd forgotten. Or maybe thought I never noticed. There it was. All of it. iMessages. Screenshots. Hotel confirmations. Nicknames I wish I could unsee. A guy named Jace. Not Jason. Not Jake. Jace. A name that sounds like it belongs to someone who uses hair product and calls waiters boss. They'd been talking for 6 months. And no, it wasn't just emotional. They had a routine. Wednesdays were studio nights. Fridays, escape rooms. Sundays, she'd visit her mom. Only now I know her mom had moved to Florida. And Lainey? She was renting hotel rooms under my last name. I was reading messages like, he's so gentle, I almost feel bad. But he's just so there. All the time. Like a puppy. And, let's wait until after my birthday. Curtis always does something elaborate, and I don't want to raise questions yet. She was using me for the surprise party budget before dropping me. That's when I closed the tablet. I didn't cry. Not then. Not yet. Instead, I made tea. And while the kettle boiled, I looked around our kitchen, the one I remodeled so she could feel more inspired to cook, which she never did. Every tile, every drawer, every fork in that house whispered, you paid for this illusion. But the worst part? I didn't even hate her. I hated how stupid I'd been. I hated how I'd romanticized her distance as mystique. How I made excuses when she made me feel invisible. How I let the bare minimum feel like love. But the worst was yet to come. Because when I finally confronted her, When I laid it all out and waited for even a flicker of regret, what she said next changed everything. And not in the way I expected. The next morning, I said nothing. I brewed coffee, fed the dog, and acted like the night before never happened. Why? Because I needed to see her say it out loud. I needed her to admit what she thought she could keep buried behind smirks and vague words like freedom. So I waited until we were both sitting in the living room. She was scrolling her phone like it wasn't holding half the truth of our broken life. I said, calmly, I know about Jace. She froze. Not dramatically, not like in the movies. It was subtle. Just one hand paused mid-scroll, eyes not lifting. She tried to keep it casual. Who? I repeated the name. She finally looked up. You went through my stuff? I didn't answer that. I just stared, waiting. That's when she dropped the line that still makes my jaw clench. You're overreacting. It's not like I love him. Like cheating only counts if you send flowers afterward. Like emotional erosion over 6 months somehow mattered less than a 3-word phrase. She tried to spin it. Told me I'd been too available. That I made her feel watched. That she just needed to feel unattached for a while. Unattached. While still married. Still in my house. Still using my name to check into hotel rooms. I laughed. I actually laughed. She got offended. Curtis, this isn't funny. You're twisting everything. You don't understand what I've been going through. She wanted to be the victim. That was the moment I realized. She didn't feel guilty. She felt inconvenienced. I stood up, walked to the door, opened it wide, and said, then go live for yourself, Lainey. Be free. Just don't do it in a house built on my loyalty. Her jaw clenched, but she didn't move. Because she never expected I'd actually let her go. She didn't pack. She didn't cry. She didn't even slam the door. She just stood there, staring at me like I'd stolen her script and started reading lines she didn't write. You're really kicking me out? She said after a long silence. I didn't say anything. You're being petty, Curtis. This isn't how grown-ups handle marriage. I finally looked at her and said, you're right. Grown-ups handle marriage by not sneaking off with someone named Jace while their husband's designing the new deck you wanted for summer. She rolled her eyes. Oh my God, that again? That. Again. Like it was a minor hiccup. Like cheating was something you stubbed your toe on and moved past. But here's where it shifted. Because she didn't leave. She didn't call a friend. She didn't sleep on the couch. She started doing laundry. That night, she cleaned the bathroom. Made dinner. Lit a candle, my candle. The one she used to say gave her headaches. I watched her move around the house like nothing happened. Like she was trying to overwrite reality with routine. And then came her real move. I told Jace it's over. She said over pasta, stabbing a piece like it offended her. You made your point. I didn't answer. Can we not make this a thing, Curtis? Can't we just reset? Reset. Like we were some app that just needed a force quit and a fresh launch. I asked her, why didn't you leave? She shrugged. Because this is still my life. Just because you're hurt doesn't mean I stop existing. I stared at her. Lainey, you broke something. You don't get to act like we're just stressed or having a bad week. She set her fork down and looked at me. Really looked, for the first time in weeks. I just wanted to feel something new, she said. I didn't think it would break us. That was her logic. Curiosity over consequence. And in that moment, I realized she wasn't just staying because of comfort. She was staying because she didn't believe I'd follow through. She thought I'd eventually fold, like I always did. But this time, I had a plan. And it started with an envelope I'd hidden behind the microwave. The envelope wasn't flashy. Just plain white. Creased from being shoved behind the microwave where I knew she'd never look. Inside was a list. Not a confession, not evidence. Just numbers. My numbers. My income. The home equity statement. The titles. The accounts. Every single thing she had comfortably assumed she'd always have access to. I slid it across the table during breakfast. She didn't even look up at first. Just sipped her coffee like we were in some quiet suburban version of a Cold War. What's this? She asked. Reality, I said. She opened it. Scanned it. I watched her pupils twitch as the implications landed one by one. There was no fight in her voice when she said, this looks serious. It is. I've already spoken to a financial advisor. Everything that's mine is being separated starting this week. You said you wanted to live for yourself? Great. This is your head start. Lainey blinked. You're actually cutting me off? I nodded. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. The thing about someone like her is they depend on you not meaning what you say. She lived in the space between my words and my actions, gambling that I'd never actually change anything. But this time, I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't even angry. I was done. That hit her harder than any insult ever could. "Curtis," she said, softer than I expected, "you're really doing this." "You already did," I replied. She went quiet. Then came the tears, but they weren't heartbreak tears. They were consequence tears. The kind that show up when comfort gets pulled out from under you. The kind that say, "Wait, you weren't supposed to actually walk away." I let her cry. I didn't offer a tissue. I just stood up, took the dog's leash, and said, "We'll be back in an hour. When we return, I want you to decide. Are you leaving? Or am I?" I didn't yell. I didn't slam the door. I just walked out, breathing for the first time in weeks, knowing full well that when I came back, everything would be different. But what I didn't know was that she'd try one final move before I could finish mine. When I came back from the walk, the house was too quiet. Not peaceful, tense, like it was holding its breath. The lights were off in the living room, the curtains drawn. For a second I thought maybe she'd left. Maybe she'd taken the hint, packed a bag, and slipped away quietly like she once slipped into someone else's hotel bed. But no. She was in the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the mattress, holding a photo album. Of us. That alone was strange. We hadn't opened that album in years. Not since before her yoga phase, before the secret passwords and locked screens, before Jace. She didn't look at me when I entered. "I was thinking about when you proposed," she said quietly. "You remember that?" I nodded. "Of course. You were shaking. You dropped the ring." "I didn't drop it," I said. "It slipped because you grabbed my hand so fast." She laughed just once. It was a weird moment, nostalgia being used like camouflage. Then she stood up, walked over, and handed me something. Not a gift, not a key, a letter. "I wrote this last night," she said, "before you showed me the envelope, before I realized you weren't bluffing." I opened it carefully. It wasn't long. It wasn't emotional. It was strategic. A list of conditions. What she called terms for reconciliation. It included things like weekly relationship check-ins, independent therapy, trial separation with continued cohabitation, and complete financial transparency on both sides. I looked up and said, "This isn't a letter. This is a negotiation." She nodded like that was a good thing. "You're trying to salvage control, Lainey. That's what this is." "No," she said. "I'm trying to survive. Because if you cut me off, I'm done. I don't have anyone else." That sentence hit me like a slap in reverse. Not painful, just pathetic. She had bet everything on me staying weak. On me choosing pity over peace. I folded the paper and said, "You always had someone else." That was the problem. She opened her mouth to fire back, but I stopped her. "I'm not negotiating with someone who only wants me when I walk away." And just like that, the last card she thought she held burned up in her hands. But I wasn't done yet. Because I had one move left too, and it was the one thing she never thought I'd do. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there beside her in silence, listening to her breathing like it was some sort of countdown. She had tried everything. Denial, deflection, manipulation dressed up as compromise. And I had stayed calm through all of it. But what she still didn't understand was this. My silence wasn't weakness. It was preparation. In the morning, I didn't tell her what I was doing. I just got dressed, grabbed a folder from my desk drawer, and drove straight to our bank. I'd spent the past week setting everything in motion, slowly and quietly, so she wouldn't see it coming. The house was in my name. The savings accounts too. Even the joint account. Guess who the primary holder was? I froze the joint card. Canceled her secondary access. Moved half the liquid funds to a new account under my business, where she had no reach. It wasn't revenge. It was protection. I wasn't going to let someone who treated me like a backup plan walk out of my life with the parachute I packed. By the time I got back home, she was in the kitchen, wearing a robe she hadn't touched in months. She was making breakfast. Like nothing happened. Like we were still pretending. "Hey," she said, cheerful. "Made you coffee." I didn't even look at the mug. I placed the bank paperwork on the table and said, "Everything's finalized." She blinked. "What?" "The accounts. The house. My attorney's got everything now. You said you wanted freedom. You've got it." That's when the coffee mug started shaking in her hand. "Curtis, wait. You actually? You thought I'd blink. I didn't. You thought I'd fall apart. I didn't. You thought if you stayed long enough, I'd forget what you did. I didn't." Her lips parted like she wanted to speak, but no words came out. And then the tears came. But not performative ones. Not strategic. These were real. The kind of tears that come when someone realizes they ran out of rope and there's no one left to blame. I didn't think you'd actually stop loving me, she whispered. I didn't, I said. I just stopped letting you use it. And I walked out. But this story wasn't quite over. Because 2 weeks later, something arrived in my mailbox, and it was from him. 2 weeks after she left, a letter arrived in the mail. No return address. Just a handwritten name on the back. Jace. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Part of me didn't want to. I wasn't sure if it was some petty jab, some lame apology, or worse, some twisted victory lap. But curiosity won, like it always does. The letter was short. 4 lines. Didn't know she was married when we met. She told me you were controlling. If I had known, I wouldn't have touched it. Sorry for what I stepped in. Respect. That was it. No signature. No number. Just one final reminder of how deeply she had lied. Not just to me, but to everyone. She hadn't just betrayed me. She'd rewritten reality to make herself the hero of her own fantasy. She wasn't running from me. She was running from accountability. But here's the part one didn't expect. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. The truth was, I felt free. For the first time in nearly a decade, I wasn't guessing what someone else felt. I wasn't walking on eggshells, trying to hold a relationship together with duct tape and optimism. I was breathing, fully, deeply. I had my own space, my own money, my own peace. And more importantly, I had my self-respect back. I didn't respond to Jace. He didn't deserve my time. But I did write something that day to myself. A reminder. Don't ever let love become a leash. Don't ever ignore your gut again. And if someone says they want freedom, don't stand in their way. Just open the door and lock it behind them. So yeah, this started with a lie, but it ended with clarity. And honestly, that's better than closure.